As the appointed coroner, you were dispatched to Shimayi Post to examine the sudden death of County Magistrate Chen Guanhai. Upon opening the coffin, you found his fingernails had grown over 3 inches long, and sharp fangs were faintly visible between his lips. That night, every horse in the post station was torn apart, and the night watchman's throat had vanished without a trace. You hid beneath the coffin and heard the corpse howling above your head over and over, looking for a Nan. Looking for a Nan. While going through the magistrate's belongings, you found a blood-stained letter hidden close to his body. There are kidnappers at Shimayi. I fear a Nan is among them. On your hunt for the culprit, the undead magistrate trailed you, not to harm, but to protect. Only when you rushed out of the bandit's den carrying his kidnapped daughter did he collapse into ash under the morning sun. His final gesture, a rotting fingertip lightly brushed the sleeping girl's cheek. The cold seeped up from the cracks between the stone slabs beneath your feet, damp and bone-deep, coiling up your legs like a snake. Shimayi Post felt like an old burial shroud discarded in the wilderness, soaked through with late autumn chill. Wind howled through the broken eaves of the post station, sweeping up a few dead leaves before slamming them hard against the tightly shut gates. A faint mustiness clung to the air, along with something subtler and far more chilling to a coroner like you, the metallic tang of death passing by. In the main hall, a few oil lamps flickered weakly, barely tearing a corner of the darkness, yet casting long, twisted shadows across the walls. Postmaster Zhao Dequan's face, under the swaying light, looked like crumpled parchment, his eyes swollen, bloodshot veins creeping across the whites. His voice shook uncontrollably. Magistrate Chen, he was fine just 2 nights ago, still working late into the second watch. Who would have thought by dawn He choked mid-sentence, overwhelmed by terror, and could only gasp for breath. You, Chen Mo, coroner dispatched from the prefecture, let your sharp gaze, honed like a scalpel, slice across Zhao Dequan's twitching features. The fear was real. But something else lurked beneath it, an oily sheen of guilt poorly concealed. You didn't press. Instead, you adjusted the heavy coroner's kit on your shoulder, its cold wooden edges digging into your scapula with a jolt of clarity. Where is the body stored? We've set up a temporary shelter in the back. Zhao answered quickly, as if grasping at salvation, and hurried to lead the way. The back courtyard was darker still. A crude canopy of straw mats was held up by a few wooden stakes, serving as a makeshift mourning tent. In the center, a heavy, black, lacquered coffin lay in silence, like a slumbering beast. From a withered tree nearby came the eerie screech of a night owl, making your scalp crawl. You signaled the 2 young postmen to open the coffin. As the lid scraped against the mortise joints with a tooth-grating creak, a stench so thick and putrid it felt solid burst out, filling your nose and smashing straight into your brain. The postmen turned pale as paper, their stomachs roiling. They stumbled back, gagging behind their hands. Holding your breath, you forced yourself a step closer. Under the dim lamplight, you saw Chen Guanhai in his half-worn green official robe, lying flat on his back. His face bore an unnatural ashen hue with a faint greenish tint. But what made your pupils shrink were his hands, the hands that once penned official decrees. In just a day or two, the nails had grown more than 3 inches, black, hooked, and sharp as claws, glinting with an eerie sheen in the flickering light. His lips were pressed shut, but they bulged ever so slightly, hinting at 2 pale, deadly points just beneath the skin, struggling to pierce through. A jolt of icy dread shot from your tailbone to the crown of your head. Instinctively, your hand went to the razor-sharp blade you always kept at your waist. This wasn't a normal death. A dark, venomous premonition coiled tight around your heart. You pushed back the nausea and fear and barked, "Seal it! Now! Lime, sprinkle, lime, hurry!" The lid was slammed shut with clumsy urgency, the loud thud echoing sharply through the still night. Lime dust was hastily thrown around the coffin, forming a choking white cloud. Zhao Dequan collapsed to the floor, trembling uncontrollably, muttering over and over, "This is cursed, cursed!" You ordered Chen Guanhai's personal belongings, moved to the main hall. Then you lay down fully dressed on a hard wooden bed in one of the side rooms, your wrist knife tucked beneath your pillow, its cold edge pressing against your ear. Outside, the wind wailed like tortured ghosts. The station felt like a giant, decaying coffin with you trapped inside. Eyes open, you stared hard at the beam above, every nerve drawn taut as a bowstring. Those blackened claws, those ghostly fangs, they burned into your mind like brands. Your instincts screamed this wasn't over. Something beyond reason, something deeply dangerous, was lurking in the dark, waiting to strike. You didn't know how long had passed, but just as your mind began to blur with fatigue and tension, "Winniniwi!" A piercing horse's scream shattered the silence. That cry, it was pure agony and terror, so sharp it nearly burst your eardrums. Then came a second, a third. The stable in the back courtyard erupted into chaos, frantic whinnies, the heavy thud of hooves, the crack of shattered wood, and a low, wet, tearing sound like old burlap being ripped apart. You bolted upright, heart pounding like war drums. A wave of cold shot through every vein. Something had gone terribly wrong. There was no time for shoes. You hit the floor barefoot, grabbed the knife from under your pillow, flung the door open, and ran. The sight in the stable turned your blood to ice. Your stomach lurched violently. It was hell. A living, bleeding hell. Several fences had been broken, splinters soaked in dark flesh and gore. Horses lay twisted in death, bodies mangled at impossible angles. Their bellies were torn wide open, spilling guts in sickening rainbow shades across the floor. The stench of blood and offal was thick enough to choke. Intestines looped around shattered posts like filthy ropes. One horse's neck had been half torn away, the wound a bloody mess of exposed trachea and bone. The old night watchman, Uncle Wang, lay at the stable's entrance, face up, eyes bulging from their sockets, frozen in sheer terror. His neck was gone, just a gaping, jagged hole of flesh and blood, the spine faintly visible inside. Blood spread like spilled ink beneath his body, pooling outward in slow, sticky waves. "Oh, God!" Zhao Dequan and the other postmen stumbled in behind you, gasping like broken bellows. One collapsed to the ground, a dark, wet patch spreading across his pants. Panic spread like a plague. The postman broke down, shrieking, "Ghosts! Ghosts! It's a zombie! We're dead!" and scrambled for the main gate, desperate to flee the slaughterhouse. Zhao tried to follow, but you grabbed his wrist in a grip so tight it nearly snapped bone. Your bloodshot eyes locked onto his, your voice low and ice cold. "Lock the doors. Bar the windows. Anyone who tries to run dies first." At the edge of death, chaos meant certain doom. Frightened by your ferocity, Zhao nodded like a beaten drum, shouting for the others to shut and barricade every door and window. Tables and chairs were dragged over to reinforce the gates. The post station became a trembling fortress. Forcing yourself calm, you scanned the carnage with eyes like a hawk. In the flickering torchlight, you suddenly knelt and stared hard at a patch of muddy ground near Uncle Wang's corpse, several deep, trampled footprints. The prints were odd, pointed at the front, heavy at the heel, far too large for any man. Stranger, still, the heels barely left a mark. as if the thing had walked on tiptoes. The trail led straight toward the mourning tent where the coffin lay. You jerked your head up, eyes fixed on the tent. A chill surged through your skull. That black coffin sat there as quiet as the grave, and never had your dread felt so real. You tightened your grip on the knife until your knuckles turned white and growled, "Shut up! If you want to live, do exactly what I say." Your gaze swept over the few pale, shivering postmen still standing. You, and you, come with me. Zhao, take the rest, and form a ring with torches. That thing hates the light. With two barely standing postmen at your side, torches in hand, you advance toward the mourning tent step by slow, heavy step. Every footfall felt like stepping onto searing iron. Inside, the tent was dead silent. The black coffin remained motionless, its lid sealed tight. The lime powder scattered earlier gleamed a blinding white in the torchlight. No footprints, no disturbance. Had you been wrong? Had the thing not returned? Just as a sliver of relief crept in, thud! A dull, deafening bang exploded from inside the coffin, completely without warning, as if something massive inside had slammed against the lid. Ah! One of the postmen screamed, his soul nearly leaving his body. He dropped his torch, which hissed out on the ground. Thud! 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 Each hit came harder, wilder, the entire heavy coffin shaking violently. Dust trickled from the seam between lid and base. This wasn't human strength. It's coming out! The zombie's coming out! The other postman wailed, his voice cracking with terror. He turned and scrambled away on hands and knees, as if wishing he'd been born with more legs to run faster. Now, only you and one still burning torch remained. The coffin rocked more and more violently, the pounding like death's own war drum, slamming into your chest. Under that relentless force, the lid moaned and cracked, a thin gap split open, half a finger wide. You couldn't wait any longer. A flash of madness crossed your eyes. Run? This post station wasn't big enough to hide. Better to gamble than be picked off one by one in the dark. You blew out the torch. Light would only give you away. Darkness fell like a curtain. Using your memory of the coffin's last flickering silhouette, you lunged like a leopard, flinging yourself to its side, grabbed the edge with both hands, and with all your strength, twisted your waist and rolled in. Just as your body hit the narrow space beneath the coffin, a thunderous crash shattered the air. Clang! The heavy lid exploded upward with inhuman force, as if hurled by a catapult, smashing into the straw-matted roof before tumbling to the ground. Rotten wood splinters and dust flew into the air. A tall, stiff figure rose from within the coffin bolt upright. A suffocating stench burst out, 10 times stronger than before. Curled in the icy base of the coffin, pressed to the damp soil, your heart pounded so violently you thought it might leap from your throat. You bit your lips so hard you tasted blood, barely stifling a scream. Sheer terror froze your limbs, but your training as a coroner, your will to live, sharpened your senses to their limit. Through the narrow slit between coffin and ground, you could see only a pair of stiff legs clad in black official boots, standing still beside the coffin. The hem of the rotting robe hung down, brushing against dark brown earth and crimson bloodstains that had yet to fully dry. Silence. Absolute, maddening silence. Only the thunder of your own heartbeat filled the confined space. Suddenly, the feet moved one step forward. Rigid, heavy, silent. Yet it moved with a strange, eerie swiftness, pulling away from the coffin's edge. You hadn't even drawn a breath when the feet stopped again right where the torch had gone out. It seemed to be inspecting it, Time froze. Every second felt like a century. The coffin's floor was cold as ice. The rotting stench crept relentlessly into your nostrils. You gripped the wrist blade in your hand, knuckles turning white from strain. Sweat soaked through your thin shirt, clammy and cold. That blade was your only hope, but against something like this, what could it really do? Just when the silence was about to drive you mad, a strange sound gurgled from above. Ha ha ha. It wasn't a beast's growl. It wasn't human moaning. It was like a tattered bellows being forced open, air scraping past rotten vocal cords in a rigid throat, producing a grating, broken hiss. Then the hissing warped and twisted, slowly forming slurred syllables. Anan. The voice was raspy, deformed, each word like rusted metal scraping bone. It carried not just inhuman pain, but a gut-chilling, bottomless urgency. Find, Anan, find, it repeated obsessively, each broken phrase echoing louder in the deathly silent tent. The official boots began pacing in place, heavy, agitated. The frayed hem of the robe dragged against the ground with a soft, shuffling hiss. Anan, find. That voice, like a curse, poured into your ears. Terror still gnawed at your bones like frozen spikes, but a rush of shock and confusion burst through the cold. Anan, find? What was it searching for? A name? A child? This thing, this creature that should have been nothing but a mindless killer still had such a burning obsession? Like lightning through the dark, the thought struck you. Chen Guanhai's belongings, the box you had ordered, moved to the main hall. Above your head, the pacing and howling continued. Every cry of Anan was a hammer to your nerves. You couldn't wait. If the thing found you now, it'd be too late. You needed that box. Holding your breath, you slithered like the most cautious gecko, using the monster's pacing rhythm to slowly, inch by inch, crawl toward the tent's edge. Every movement echoed in your ears like a drumbeat. The stench of decay, the corpse's foul aura, and the cold grip of fear pressed around you like a suffocating shroud. You didn't know how long it took, maybe a lifetime, but you finally slipped out from beneath the straw canopy. Cold night air swept across your damp neck, snapping you briefly into focus. You didn't dare look back. Hands and knees scrambling, back hunched low, you shot along the wall like a shadow. As fast and quiet as you could, you bolted toward the faint light and distant murmurs of the main hall, though they were mostly sobs and the sound of chattering teeth. "Shut the door! Hold it!" you rasped, throwing yourself against the reinforced main gate. Together with Zhao Dequan and the others, you braced it with your bodies. Only 4 people remained, including Zhao, all pale as corpses. "Coroner Chen, that thing!" Zhao stammered like a dying leaf in the wind. "The box!" You cut him off, breath sharp. "Chen Guanhai's belongings! Now!" Zhao snapped out of it, scrambling to a corner and pointing to a half-worn camphorwood chest. You lunged for it, flinging open the lid. Inside were a folded official robe, a few old books, an inkstone, loose silver, ordinary things. You tossed them out one by one, hope sinking fast. Nothing. Was it a false lead? Just as the bottom neared, your fingers brushed a strange, hard lump sewn into the robe's inner lining, thin. You tore the stitching open. A square, neatly folded piece of letter paper fell out, its edges frayed and worn. It felt slightly damp to the touch, with the scent of old sweat and a faint, nearly undetectable hint of blood. You unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably Chen Guanhai's, rigid and scholarly, written in haste and pressure. The ink had bled slightly. The words were forced and urgent. "To my dear wife. Prefectural affairs have kept me away with no clear return. Yet upon investigation, I found much amiss at Shimayi Post. Postmaster Zhao Dequan behaves with suspicious secrecy. I fear he may be connected to the recent wave of child abductions. I still recall last year's disappearance of Lord Wang's son in the neighboring county. The trail ended near Shimayi. I am deeply worried. Our daughter, Anan, is still young. Do not let her approach the post station alone. If I should not return, you must flee with her at once and report to the prefecture. Remember this. Mark it well. There are traffickers here. Anan is in danger. Guanhai, my final words. That last line, there are traffickers here. Anan is in danger. The ink was so dark it had seeped through the paper. At several strokes, faint splashes of dried, blackened blood were visible. A chill slammed into you. Shimayi, child kidnappers, missing children. Chen Guanhai was investigating. He found Zhao Dequan. He sensed danger. He feared for his daughter, Anan. This letter was his final warning to his wife. His last, most desperate obsession before death. His daughter might have fallen into the hell of Shimayi. Anan, find Anan. That hoarse, twisted cry from the zombie exploded in your mind like thunder. It wasn't mindless howling. It was the last thread of a father's instinct, clinging to his rotting corpse. A towering injustice, a love beyond death twisting into a will so fierce it defied mortality. He was looking for his daughter. Even like this, he was still searching. You snapped your head up. Your eyes burned red like hot knives, stabbing toward Zhao Dequan, who sat collapsed in the corner, pale as death. Suddenly, everything made sense. His unnatural fear, his shifty eyes, the way he dodged questions about the station. A surge of burning rage exploded through your skull, as if it would scorch right through your crown. Zhao Dequan, you roared, like a dying beast. One stride brought you face to face with him. You seized his collar and lifted him clean off the ground. Your face was twisted with fury and bloodlust. The cold blade of your wrist knife pressed to his trembling, greasy throat. Blood instantly welled up in a thin line. Talk! Where's Magistrate Chen's daughter? Where are you keeping her? Say nothing, and I'll show you what it feels like to be ripped apart alive. The fear of death finally crushed the deeper evil inside Zhao Dequan. Seeing the raw madness in your eyes, feeling the cold blade and warm blood at his throat, his defenses collapsed. Mercy. Please, Master Chen, he sobbed, screaming like a butchered pig. I'll talk. Behind the post station, there's an abandoned charcoal kiln in the rear hills. That's where they stashed the kidnapped children, waiting for the heat to die down before moving them. Magistrate Chen, he caught wind of something. The night before last, he tried sneaking to the kiln. We found out. And then, his voice caught in his throat, eyes pleading. And then what? Your knife pressed deeper. Beads of blood dripped down. He fell off the cliff behind the mountain. Zhao muttered, barely audible, his eyes avoiding yours. Fell? Like hell he did. Bang! You punched him square in the face, sending him crashing to the floor like a sack of rotten meat. Blood poured from his nose. But this wasn't the time for vengeance. Anan, that child was still trapped in hell. Just then, bang! A deafening crash shook the gate. The barricading furniture groaned under pressure. The bolts cracked with a sickening snap. Rah! That inhuman roar, full of rage and desperation, pierced through the heavy door and stabbed into the room. It was here. It had sensed it. It knew this place held clues about its daughter. It wanted in. Hold it shut! You screamed at the two remaining terrified postmen. Then you turned and sprinted toward the small door leading to the rear courtyard. Zhao Dequan's confession burned into your mind. Rear mountain. Abandoned kiln. The moment you burst through the small door, A deafening explosion of splintering wood and hopeless screams erupted behind you. You didn't dare look back. Your heart pounded like thunder, lungs ablaze. You plunged into the ink-black woods behind the post station, the wet crunch of rotting leaves beneath your feet, sharp branches lashing your face and limbs like whips. Behind you, the howls and cries from the post station grew faint, swallowed by the howling mountain wind and rustling forest. But you knew it wouldn't stop. That zombie, that thing driven by the obsession to find a Nan, would follow. You fled through the pitch-dark forest, blind to direction, guided only by Zhao's vague hint and a mad desperation. Terror clung to you like leeches. Every slip, every trip over a vine sent your heart leaping into your throat. You gripped the wrist knife tighter. Sweat drenched the hilt, making it slick and cold in your hand. You didn't know how long you ran. Just as your lungs felt ready to burst and your legs turned to lead, a dark shape appeared through the thinning trees, a massive silhouette half buried in the hillside, the abandoned charcoal kiln. Its mouth gaped like a monster, swallowing the last traces of daylight, its depths unfathomable. You were about to breathe when a spike of ice-cold fear shot up your spine without warning. Instinct screamed. You dove forward. Whoosh! A gust of foul, rotting wind sliced just past the back of your skull. You crashed onto the cold, muddy ground at the kiln entrance, rolled once, and flicked your tinder torch grabbed earlier from the post station. A faint flame sputtered to life, casting trembling light across the scene. The towering zombie in its tattered official robe stood less than 3 steps from you. Under the flickering firelight, its rotten face looked even more grotesque. Gray skin blotched with corpse spots, fangs bared outside its lips, gleaming bone white. Its eyes, cloudy and pale, locked onto you not with madness or bloodlust, but with a desperate, burning intensity. From its throat came that broken bellows sound again, rasping, faltering. A Nan! It didn't lunge to tear you apart. It was waiting. It knew you could lead it to its daughter. You gasped for breath, heart pounding, fit to burst, the hand holding the knife shaking uncontrollably. The tiny flame barely lit anything, but the zombie flinched ever so slightly from it, tilting its rotted head. You realized it light. It feared light. Weak as it was, the tinder flame was still light. "A Nan's inside!" you screamed hoarsely, pouring every ounce of strength into your voice. You pointed the flame toward the pitch-dark kiln entrance, raising your knife defensively. "Come with me, let's find her!" The zombie's rasping paused. Its cloudy eyes seemed to strain, slowly shifting from your face to the kiln. It was thinking, processing. A few seconds passed agonizingly long. Finally, it gave a stiff, barely perceptible nod. The movement was tiny, but carried heartbreaking finality. It stopped looking at you. Instead, it turned its decaying head toward the darkness within the kiln. From its throat came that same broken cry, a Nan. It worked. You swallowed down the rising bile and paralyzing fear, gritted your teeth, and, holding the weak flame aloft, began backing into the kiln step by slow step. The zombie followed silently, like a terrible, silent guardian statue, always 3 steps behind. Each step it took was soundless but crushing, pressing on your nerves like lead. The stench hung over you like a physical shroud. Rotten breath chilled the back of your neck. The kiln's interior was deeper and more winding than expected. The narrow mouth led into a cavern carved from the mountain's belly. The tinder light barely lit the ground beneath your feet. All around was impenetrable blackness. The air was thick and foul, heavy with years of ash, mold, and a faint, sour stench child urine. Your heart clenched. Then whimper, sob, a faint, broken cry, like a wounded animal, floated out from the depths. Every hair on your body stood on end. The zombie behind you froze. From its throat burst a guttural, trembling rasp. It tried to rush forward, but held itself back. Its rotten fingers clawed spasmodically at the dark. You quickened your pace, following the sound. The flame flickered and finally revealed the scene. In the deepest corner of the kiln, a small open space lay scattered with moldy straw. 4 or 5 tiny figures huddled there, none older than 7 or 8, the youngest barely 3 or 4. Their clothes were tattered, their limbs thin and frail, faces smeared with grime and tears. One little girl, no older than 4 or 5, with 2 scraggly braids, had buried her face in her knees. Her tiny shoulders shook violently as she cried, letting out muffled sobs. Her red cotton jacket, though filthy and torn, still glared vividly in the firelight. "Anan!" The zombie behind you let out a hoarse, broken wail. The grief, the joy, the indescribable sorrow in that cry shattered the silence of the kiln in an instant. It surged forward in a single stride, just as a new danger erupted. "What the hell was that?" A gruff shout exploded from the shadows on the other side of the kiln. 2 burly men, blades gleaming in hand, rushed out, startled by the zombie's wail. Their faces were brutish, eyes full of malice, clearly seasoned thugs. One had a jagged scar running from brow to lip. "Who the hell?" The scar-faced thug froze mid-sentence. The firelight caught the towering, rotted figure behind you, fangs bared, robes in tatters. The thug's bravado melted into sheer, bone-deep terror. His eyes bulged, jaw hanging slack. He couldn't speak, only chatter his teeth in terror. His partner was worse. With a shriek, he dropped his blade with a clatter. A dark stain spread down his pants as he wet himself. "Zombie!" Scarface finally managed to force out a shriek from deep in his throat. Fear overwhelmed reason. He raised his machete not to attack you, but to swing wildly and desperately at the zombie. Roar! In the face of danger, the zombie let out an earth-shaking roar, filled with pure rage and destruction. It lashed out with a single swipe so fast it left only a blur. Crack! A sickening snap echoed. The steel machete, swung by Scarface, snapped like rotten wood under the strike of the zombie's decayed hand with its jet-black claws. The broken blade spun through the air and embedded itself deep in the dirt wall. The blow's momentum didn't stop. It slammed into Scarface's chest. Whumph! He flew backward, like he'd been hit by a charging stallion, crashing hard into the wall. His chest visibly caved in, blood and shredded organs spurting wildly from his mouth. He didn't even have time to scream. His body twitched a few times, then went still. The other thug watched the hellish scene unfold, his pants soaked through, a garbled scream escaping his throat. He scrambled frantically, trying to flee deeper into the kiln. But the zombie didn't even glance at him. All its attention was on that tiny, sobbing figure in the straw pile. It let out another, tormented, urgent cry. Anan. With a stiff, almost stumbling motion, it began to lunge toward the straw. "Stop! You'll scare her," you shouted, throwing yourself between the zombie and the girl, roaring with all your strength. You saw the little girl had lifted her head. Her small face was pale, eyes wide and filled with paralyzing terror, staring blankly at the nightmarish figure before her. The zombie froze. It seemed to understand your words. Its clouded eyes, filled with nothing but destruction, twitched wildly, shifting from you to the trembling child. A beast-like whimper rasped from its throat. Its decaying body trembled violently with restraint. Its black claws gouged deep into the hardened dirt wall, tearing out great chunks of earth. That was your chance. While it was wholly fixated on its daughter, struggling in agony, the fleeing thug had scrambled to a hidden tunnel on the far side of the kiln, their secret escape route. "Stop!" you bellowed, sprinting after him. You couldn't let him get away, you needed a live witness. The thug crawled into the low tunnel, but you were already behind him. In a flash, you hurled your knife. Thud! The blade struck home right into his thigh. He screamed like a slaughtered pig and collapsed, clutching his bleeding leg, writhing in pain. You leapt on him, pinning him down, tearing off part of his shirt to staunch the bleeding. A live witness, you had to keep him alive. Just as you secured him, a child's scream, piercing and raw, rang out from the straw pile. You turned instantly. The zombie at some point had crept stiffly, slowly, to the edge of the straw. It seemed to want to get closer, but hesitated, afraid to frighten her. Its rotting body leaned forward slightly. One decayed hand, claws black and sharp, reached out, trembling, awkward, heartbreakingly gentle toward the girl in the red jacket, still crying and trembling. Chen Guanhai's daughter, a Nan. "Wow, monster! Go away! Go away!" A Nan shrieked in terror, completely overwhelmed by the nightmare before her. She scrambled deeper into the straw, flailing her limbs, grabbing handfuls of ash and straw to throw at the approaching figure. The zombie's hand froze in midair, less than a foot from her face. A guttural, broken whimper escaped its throat. It seemed to want to pull back, but couldn't bear to. In those clouded eyes, you almost thought you saw a glimmer of moisture. Tears? No, just fluids from rotting tissue. But the grief radiating from that still figure nearly drowned the entire kiln in sorrow. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart. Don't be scared," you shouted hoarsely, your voice cracking with urgency. "He's not a monster. He's..." You choked on the words. How could you tell a terrified child? "He's your father?" You released the unconscious thug and rushed to the straw. Swallowing the ache in your chest, you scooped a Nan into your arms, gently but firmly, shielding her from the sight behind you. Her tiny body trembled violently in your arms, her sobs turning into soft, hiccuping whimpers. She clutched your collar with all her strength. "Let's go! We're getting out!" you said through gritted teeth, holding her close, turning toward the zombie. "Follow me! I'll get you both out!" The zombie let out a low, unintelligible hiss. Slowly, heavily, it lowered its outstretched hand, then turned silently. The hem of its rotted robe dragged across the ground like a moving tombstone. Without a word, it walked ahead, clearing the path. Its silhouette, massive under the flickering tinder light, was shrouded in unspeakable loneliness and desolation. The kiln wound on, deep and narrow. The zombie marched forward in silence, each step echoing with death. You followed closely, holding a Nan tightly. Her face was pressed to your neck, her body still trembling beneath your shirt. She had cried herself to exhaustion, only the occasional sniffle remained. Her big eyes, still filled with fear, blinked slowly. Her wet lashes clung together. The tinder flame burned on, casting twisted shadows of the zombie's towering figure across the damp kiln walls like totems from hell. The exit drew closer. A faint sliver of dawn seeped through the cracks. The deepest darkness before dawn was ebbing. Just then, the zombie suddenly stopped. It turned around stiffly. Those clouded, gray eyes no longer held destruction but a pleading, desperate intensity. They pierced the dark and locked on a Nan in your arms. Ah, a Nan, it rasped again, clearer, louder, filled with heart-wrenching grief and farewell. You understood instantly. It sensed it. Dawn was breaking. Roar! A savage final roar burst from its throat. No longer a cry, but a pure, destructive warning. Its rotting body summoned the last of its strength and surged forward not to lead, but to hurl itself toward the light. You held Anand tight and followed. You burst out into the open. The cold morning air rushed into your lungs, crisp with the scent of mountain grass. In the east, the heavy clouds split open. A blazing gold-red beam pierced the heavens like a flaming blade from the gods. The world was bathed in a tragic, blood-hued light. The zombie stood straight in a clearing outside the kiln, no more than 10 steps away, bathed in morning light, light that was its mortal poison. It faced the east, arms spread wide, as if to embrace the blazing sun or as if offering its final, silent sacrifice. Like a hot brand pressed to grease-soaked cloth. Acrid smoke burst from its sunlit flesh. Gray skin burned like wax, blackening, curling, sloughing away. It let out a shriek beyond human comprehension, a cry of pain as the soul itself tore apart. Its body twisted violently in the golden light. But it didn't fall, didn't run. It even tried painfully, slowly to turn around once more. "Don't look!" you cried, pressing Anand's face to your shoulder, shielding her from the unbearable sight. You stared, tears bursting from your eyes, hot and bitter, mingling with sweat and dirt. At last, it completed that turn. That face, now charred beyond recognition, turned once more toward you. In its dying eyes, clouded, crumbling, flashed one last flickering light, the faintest glimmer of Chen Guanhai, of a father. A final, whisper-thin rasp escaped like a sigh, carried away by the mountain wind. Its massive body collapsed forward, no crash, only a soft, ashen sigh. The towering figure vanished. All that remained was a small heap of charred ash and tattered scraps of robe. The mountain breeze stirred a few strands of soot, swirling them into the awakening forest, gone in an instant. The world fell silent. Only the whispering wind in the trees, the chirping of birds, and the soft, steady breathing of Anand in your arms. Somehow, she had fallen asleep. You stood there, frozen, holding the child. At your feet lay the last trace of a father. The morning light spilled across the forest and your tear-streaked, dirt-smeared face. A cold warmth, too late, too cruel. You looked down at Anand's little brow, still slightly furrowed in sleep. Her tiny face, so young, so innocent. Slowly, gently, you knelt down as if afraid to wake her, or disturb the ashes beneath your feet. Your trembling fingers reached out. With a reverence-like prayer, you picked up a pinch of ash mixed with scraps of charred fabric. The ash was cold, carrying the scent of death no sunlight could dispel. But it was light, light as a shattered dream. The mountain wind blew, and the ash scattered silently from your fingertips.